Welcome to BRAMstrology, where you are now taking steps to becoming your rare, authentically mastered self using the language of the stars. My name is Brandon, and today we're going to be talking about the Sun in Aries and Sun in the first house. So, first of all, if you're new to my channel, hello, my name's Brandon. I do astrology stuff. If you can't tell by the intro, and you can't tell by this, get with the program. Come on. So, in this video, we're going to be talking about, obviously, Sun in Aries, Sun in the first house. The timestamps for those are listed down below, so you can feel free to click to those, and you'll go right to those sections. In this first introductory section here, I'm just going to kind of break down some things where I speak about what I'll be doing within this series and everything that I'm going to be pouring into this and just all this information I'm putting into you guys. So, first thing I want to talk about this, first of all, thank you, because I have now been able to do this full time, and I absolutely love this work. I love astrology. I love talking about it. So thank you for this. Secondly, if you guys don't know what your chart is and you need help figuring that out, there's some resources down below, as well as other videos and resources that I put down below that I feel are relevant, that I feel are going to be able to help you in any sort of way that I mentioned at the course of this video. And so this is going to be a very long series. I'm going to be doing every single planetary energy in every single sign and house. So it's going to take a little bit of time. In addition to that, I will also be doing, obviously my readings are open. I'll be doing any sort of classes and things like that. So feel free to reach out to me if you guys are interested in any sort of further questions. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments about this video, put it down below. If you know someone that has a Sun in Aries and or know someone that has Sun in the first house and feel this is relevant, feel free to send this to them, and feel free to comment crazy stories about Aries suns and first house suns if you want, So that's a little intro there. We're going to talk about just the basic significators of the sun really quick before we go into the Sun in Aries and Sun in the first house. This is the next part. Okay, so before we get started about the sun sign. So if you don't know your sun sign, which I highly doubt you don't, there is, in the description box below, there will be a link to a website where you can generate your sun sign. For that, you might not know what the glyph looks like. If you don't know, it looks like this. And then, so if you generate your chart down below, you'll be able to figure out exactly what sun sign you do have. Now, as it relates to your birth chart, you might not be able to figure out your house placement of your sun if you don't know your time and place of birth. Now, if you don't have that time and place of birth, I put in the description box below, there is a website that I use for my North American clients and students where you can figure out specifically what your birth time is or request a birth certificate from a hospital within the North America area. So that's in the description box below. If there is anyone in the international side of things that knows of ways to get your birth information from whatever hospital you were born at and whatever country you're at, feel free to comment that down below, because that will definitely help anyone in the future that comes to this video. In addition to that, if you are interested in rectifying your chart, which is pretty much you can't get your birth time, you can't get your birth certificate with a birth time on it, there are resources to be able to do that. I've put in the description box below a very long video on the rectification process and the best way to do that. So if you don't happen to have a birth time, you don't happen to know exactly what house any of these planets fall in, feel free to check that video out, and that'll be able to help you figure out more specifically what it is and where these houses sort of fall and where these planetary energies fall moving forward. So as it relates to the sun, the solar energy is all about the way that you shine. It's the area in life that you want to shine. And it has to do with our conscious expression. It's our ego. It's our ability to see things, because the sun is literally just a giant light. It's a giant star. It's huge. And the thing about the sun sign that's very important to understand is it really is where your consciousness is kind of focused in that specific way. There's many other ways that consciousness is focused throughout different sort of placements in your chart. But overall, the sun is the area of life that you are consciously trying to bring to light, that you're consciously trying to bring to awareness. So depending on where your sun sign is located by sign and by house, is going to break down and show you what area of life and what type of things you are going to be focused on within this life. So with the sun is much of our conscious expression, so it is something that needs to be more aware of, and that's why many of us are aware of our sun sign, and that's where a lot of people start within astrology. Now, within this video, I'm going to be talking about the Sun in Aries and Sun in the first house. I will also be talking about many other planetary energies as I progress through this series. So if you have your entire birth chart up and you're willing to sit and watch all these different videos that I have made, feel free to check those out. I have those linked in the description box below by playlist as well. And yeah, that's pretty much most of it with this end here. Let's just go ahead and get started and talk about the sun in Aries. Okay, so the sun in Aries, you are bright, leadership, beautiful energy, right? The sun absolutely loves to be in Aries. Aries suns are what they're called an exalted placement. So what this means is that the sun functions at its highest in Aries. So it has kind of the most that it can actually work with, that it can see. And as we progress through the different astrological signs and things, we will talk about them more. But for the most part, sun in Aries is a very powerful sun. It is very powerful. It's able to see very clearly what it wants, because the sun is all about yourself. It's all about your identity, your ego, your ability to shine and show the world who you are. And Aries, the sign associated with the self and the way that you show the world who you are, go hand in hand. So the sun loves to be in Aries. It has humongous leadership qualities when the sun is in Aries. Now, with the sun being in Aries as well, it does bring the beginning of the equinox. So it is a start of a new, fresh movement. And because the Aries energy is typically associated with naivety and sort of like childlike joy, the sun also loves to be in this too, because the sun likes to explore, it likes to find new areas of things, and it likes to do trial and error to figure out what it really wants and who it really is. And that's naturally what the sun and the identity kind of does as you progress throughout life. Now, it is exalted. It does express itself at its highest expression because of that exaltation, and because it functions very brightly, because it is also focused on the self, focused on the development of the self, the development of the life direction, because Aries has to do with life direction as well as kind of self-assertion of individuality and your individual self. And the sun is very much the individual self. So you're able to see things as it relates to just you and only you, and that's all that really should matter with an Aries sun, with the sun in general. The sun needs to just be focused on the self, because at the end of the day, you come in this life alone, you leave this life alone. And that's a very morbid way of thinking of things, but it is very true. And sun and Aries definitely have a very strong ability to focus on themselves and know that they're in this alone, and they're going to be in this alone. And if people choose to follow them, they choose to follow them. But if not, they're going to keep going, and they're going to keep going after what they want. And the sun and Aries have very bright personalities. They're very much able to be seen very well because of that exaltation with the sun being in Aries. And when you think about it, when the sun moves into Aries, at least in the area that I'm at, which is North America, everyone is much more rejuvenated. It's the start of spring. It's the start of this fresh energy, this movement towards new things. And because Aries has to do with new things and kind of that development of new things, the sun loves to show us all the new things and the kind of the new joy and the new things that we can try out in life. And Aries suns love this way of doing it. Obviously, they do have a very strong leadership quality to them, because Aries starts things. It's cardinal fire. So what that means is it's going to start things, and then fire actually brings sort of movement and motivation and inspiration to everything that it does. And when the sun is in a fire sign, it naturally invigorates and brings out that life within yourself and within everyone around you. So it is something that's very important to know. If you have an Aries sun, it's a beautiful placement. It is very, very powerful, and it really allows you to show the world a lot more of their own potential and their own leadership quality, but also more of their kind of childlike joy as well, because Aries has to do with that sort of childlike getting up and falling and kind of continuing and trying things and kind of going in a new sort of way. So there's a lot of new directions with Aries. Aries suns can be a little bit on the either naive side or the sort of only self-focused and not think about anyone else side as well, because exaltation can be great, but it can be so strong that there is almost a repression or an inability to look at the other side of the sun in Aries, which is the sun in Libra, which is other people. So there can be almost this quality of unevolved sun in Aries that are just steamrolling and going after themselves and only thinking about themselves and going forward. And that can be amazing and extremely supportive for what they need to do and what they want to do. And obviously you want to look at the rest of the chart to figure out the entirety of what's going on with this particular person. But overall, sun in Aries is going to be very much leadership quality, but there may be a kind of repression or an inability to look at other people as having any value because you feel like you kind of have it yourself. Most Aries suns don't, that I meet at least, don't have that quality, but I have seen that happen, or I can see how that can happen when you have an exalted sun and it's kind of pulling you in that direction. Now, there is a lot of energy with the sun in Aries towards self-reliance, which is really just about, I know what my needs are, I know how to get them, I know what I desire, I'm going to go after it. Because the sun does have to do with your conscious desires, and if you have it in a sign that's focused on you and focused on yourself, it's going to be something that is going to be very easy for you to manifest. And that's why self-reliance is very, very prominent in very strong Aries placements, but especially in the sun, because you're able to see your own desires and you're able to rely on yourself to meet your own conscious needs and conscious desires in that way. The other thing that may be related to the sun in Aries is there may be some interesting father relationships, because there is an energy with Aries and the sun both that have to do with the father, or the sort of paternal energy that you have around you. Now, sun in Aries typically will have a more prominent and a more positive relationship with the father versus, a sun in Libra or a sun in Aquarius, which we'll talk about when we get to those. But for the most part, sun in Aries, unless it's negatively aspect, unless there's things going on in the chart that are kind of hinting at some difficulty with the father, the sun in Aries will be a very powerful relationship with the father, a father that tends to bring a sense of self-reliance into the native and kind of pass that down, pass that leadership quality down, pass that sort of masculine energy down. Now, with this, obviously I want to look at the entire chart because it's not just the sun energy you're working with every single energy within your chart. So it's important to look at how all the nuances and everything is playing out. The other thing too about this sun in Aries, with this leadership quality, that I feel is really important to bring up for most of them, is this drive towards themselves in a way that brings out that leadership quality where people are willing to follow them. But it's almost like sun and Aries are so strong, they don't really want people around them that are just followers. They want other leaders around them, other empowered people, and other people that are willing to go the extra mile and go and kind of push further in life. And when you have a sun in Aries, I always think of this interesting relationship I had at work, where I was able to watch two managers. One was a sun in Aries, one was a sun in Leo, and their relationship with each other was very, very respectful, because they both had their own leadership qualities that they were able to kind of bring out. And for those of you that don't know, the sun is naturally at home in Leo. I'll talk about that when we get there. But having this relationship was so interesting to watch, because it kind of allowed me to see how the sun in Aries would represent itself as a leadership quality, and it only really wanted people around it that were able to kind of match that leadership quality and weren't just following them. Because Aries suns and strong, strong solar energy, they don't want everyone to just follow them. They want to kind of have someone along with them. And that's where that kind of polarity side of Aries is at, which is the Libra side, where there needs to be kind of some balance with relationships and balance with seeing other people as having value, even if they're not considered quote unquote equal to you in whatever you have to get, or whatever you're going towards, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's really honestly most of what I'm going to say about the sun in Aries. If you guys have any questions or anything you want to say about the sun in Aries, feel free to put it in the description box below. And I will move on to the next part, where I'll be talking about the sun in the first house. So, the sun in the first house is a little bit different than the sun in Aries. Sun in the first house energy, you have this almost bright quality about yourself that is what allows you to see what you can do and what you can't do. So when it comes to the first house, the planets that are in the first house are going to show you what energies you utilize to help you navigate the world. Now, when you have your sun there, it doesn't have to necessarily be in Aries. It can be in any constellation, but if your sun's in the first house, it's going to be, you're going to look at things as, how does this affect me? How does this allow me to be incorporated into this? How does this help me shine and show the world who I am? And depending on how that may benefit you or how those conscious needs show up is how you'll take those actions. That's why sun in the first house is very powerful when it comes to leadership, and it comes to the ability to be seen and show the world who you are, because the sun is your conscious desires. And you're always using those as a means to navigate and a means to figure out what move you want to do next. So you're already going to be a person that's going to be really, really bright and really able to be seen, because you're going to be using your solar energy to navigate you to say, okay, I can shine the brightest over here, so I'm going to move in this direction. I can shine the brightest over here, I'm moving this direction. So there is a very positive quality about that. It can be almost blinding to other people when you have sun in the first house, because people that don't have their sun in the first house might be a little bit off-put by how strong you come off, because your solar energy is right there for everyone to see, that they're just like, wow, this person is bright, they're loud, they're all these things. And granted, it all depends on the entirety of the chart, the aspects to the sun, as well as the sign, obviously, that the sun is in the first house, as well as everything else that's going on. So there's no way to really pin down exactly what this means. This is just general sun in the first house things. Now, there's a lot of, obviously, self-focus and strong ability. Because the sun also has to do with vitality and life, this sun in the first house person can be extremely just healthy for the most part, where they're going to be able to show the world who they are, and they're just going to be full of life, full of energy, full of move. So because your energy is very bright and very exuberant and very fun, people want to be around you. But the thing that's interesting about sun in the first house, as well as moon in the first house, because they both kind of play the same sort of role in this regard, is needing to feel like you are good, essentially, or like you have your needs met, or like you are in a good place to be seen. When you have the sun in the first, you're very much a person that knows you're going to be seen, knows you're going to be noticed. You can't really go much of anywhere without being noticed or seen or eyes on you with sun in the first house. And if you're not really feeling up to it, you don't have that vitality, that energy to give, that light, you don't really feel bright in that solar way, then you're not going to want to go out and do things. Which is why sun in the first house people, they choose the areas that they go into and the environments they put themselves in ways that they're allowed to express the entirety of their solar identity. So, for an example, if you had your sun in the first house, but you were a Scorpio sun, which is much more of a, reserved, darker, sort of colder sign, you would put yourself in situations that will allow you to express the entirety of your solar identity, which is a lot more on the darker side, things that people don't really entirely want to see. So depending on the sun sign that is in the first house, it all obviously brings a lot of flavor to this. You also do want to look to see, obviously, what solar aspects are going on. So if your sun is aspecting, a square to Neptune, square to Pluto, things of that nature. And also look to see what house rules Leo for a better idea of to what is going on that is kind of helping this play out, or how other areas that you want to shine can be seen. Now, the sun in the first house definitely needs to be seen for who they are in their entirety, because it's definitely a requirement for them to be seen in this life. They chose to be seen in this life with having the sun in the first house. The self-identity is quite linked to the father or paternal figures, similar to the sun in Aries, but this is more so linked to the ability to move based off of what your father had given you. It's not exactly the same as it relates to other planetary energies in the first house, but the sun in the first house definitely has some sort of influence from the father into how they motivate and how they choose to shine and how they choose to kind of go in that way. There may have been some sort of overshining of the father, or the father may have, their life may have, like you may have gotten something from the father or inherited a business from the father, and that's not really what you wanted it to be. Those are sorts of things that may happen with sun in the first house, or prominent sun placements, where you don't really want to be seen like your father, but you just so happen to be because you were born into that life. That doesn't have to be exactly the case, but it can happen with sun in the first house. With the sun in the first house too, there is a need to not outshine others, because that's very, very capable and very easy for you to do with sun in the first house, because you are going to be seen much easier, and people are going to want to be around you much more than other people. So there is a need to play your light in the right way and show your light when you're supposed to, essentially. And don't try and outshine others, because sun in the first house does oppose the seventh house of relationships. So this is actually much more prominent in the relationship sector and needing to balance that axis out than it was with sun in Aries and versus like sun in Libra. There is a need to impulse control control your impulses. Make sure that sun in the first house, you are not just doing things because you want to like do it for the vine, you know, do it for the ability to be seen, or doing it for fame, doing it for an ability to show the world more of who you are. Can be definitely a thing with sun in the first house. There's a lot of impulse control with the first house energy, because the sun is what you will use to navigate how you make your choices. And if you are feeling down and you want to be seen by more people, you may do something a little bit more impulsive to make that reaction and bring, you know, have your light be seen by more people, even though you really shouldn't have an issue with that, because sun in the first house is naturally going to be seen by more people anyway. The thing about with this is, obviously, like I said, look to see where Leo is and other solar aspects to see how this is playing out, because if Leo is, for example, in the 4th house, and you have, you know, some planets in Leo and things of that nature, it's going to play in differently towards the sun in the 1st house that you may have. So it is important to look at the entirety of the chart, as I've said many times in this video. The thing too, there is a big focus on health and happiness that comes easy to you because the sun is how you, it's your vitality, it's your life, it's how you sustain your life. And this becomes something that's very easy for you to maintain because the sun shows you all of what you need to do to keep going down the path you need to go down. Whether it's health or whether it's like creativity or things that allow you to just be seen more. Now, sun in the 1st house can also be people that are going to naturally be in any sort of creative sort of job as well, because it does have significators that are related to fame in different ways, but a lot of it comes from a need to be seen as individual, be seen as your own self, and show the world who you are alone and stand alone and be your own person, and kind of carve your own path in that way. And the sun wants you to really figure out who you are through that process of being an individual and being your own person, following your own direction, and really just figuring out as you go. And it's a really powerful placement, and it allows people to kind of come in and assist you in that way, to kind of direct you in the right direction with the sun in the 1st house. The thing with the sun in the 1st house as well, it's similar to the moon in the 1st. You obviously have to feel good to take action. I already talked about that a little bit before. With this being the sun, it may have to do with being seen and feeling confident in what they wear, or how you're portrayed. So this has to do more so with like self-image in this way, because the 1st house does have to do with your self-image and the way that you're perceived. And when you have the sun there, it's going to be something people are going to notice, you're going to take care of, you're going to need to take care of, because the sun is your conscious desire. So your desire is to be seen as bright and beautiful and all these different things. Obviously it depends on, you know, where the sun's located and things of that nature, but it is important for you to show the world who you are and maybe take care of yourself, dress in a certain way that makes you feel like your identity, you know. And the development of the identity is very important for sun in the 1st house people, because you have to be able to show the world who you are individually. And fashion is one of those biggest areas to do that, because fashion does show your identity and shows how you are your own person in the clothes you choose to wear, or the hair you choose to have, or the earrings or tattoos and things of that nature. So with the sun in the 1st house, there may be more of a draw to those sorts of things, or those sorts of different expressions of the self in a way to figure out who you are. But overall, with sun in the 1st house, your life is meant to have you figure out exactly who you are and show the world who you are in a very bright fashion. And that's why people love that. People love sun in the 1st house people, and it is almost blinding light that you have that other people kind of have to just deal with, but also you have to learn how to best shine that light and show that light to the people that deserve it, and not just share it with everybody. So there's a lot of importance in that, but it is a very powerful placement, and I am so excited to talk about it. So thank you for your time. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions or any comments, feel free to put them in the description box below. I'm going to be doing videos on the entirety of the zodiac, so this will be quite a long series. And if you guys have sun in the 1st house and you have some interesting stories about your sun in the 1st house, feel free to put those down below as well. If you guys are, of course, interested in any sort of reading with me, those are linked down below. My Patreon, my website, all those things are going to be down there as well. So thank you guys so much for this. I appreciate you. And this was BRAMstrology, where you have now taken steps to becoming your rare, authentically mastered self using the language of the stars. So thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day. Love you.